The officer's voice was calm, but it made my blood run cold. "Ma'am, is this Chloe Peterson? We've found 2 children, unattended. They've identified you as their aunt." My throat tightened, turning to dust. I squeezed the phone so hard my knuckles were ghost white. I had told my sister, Isabel. No, I had spelled it out for her. I would not be her safety net this time. But it didn't matter. She had put Mia and Leo in a cab anyway. She hadn't even bothered to give the driver a full address. They were left on the wrong side of the city, alone and terrified. By the time I scrambled to the police station, both kids were shivering. Their eyes were puffy and red from hours of crying. They looked so fragile in that sterile, unforgiving room. I pulled them into my arms, and a frigid rage began to build in my chest. For my entire life, I had been the quiet sister, the responsible one, the one who cleaned up the disasters, the one who always caved. Not this time. My sister thought she could bully me into submission. She thought this was just another one of her games. She was dead wrong. 3 days later, her entire world would be dismantled, and I wasn't going to be there to pick up the pieces. But before I get into that, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I have spent my whole life being the resilient one. In my family, that wasn't a virtue. It was a life sentence. It was a cage. To understand why I finally broke, you have to understand the people who shaped me. You have to understand the parts we were cast in before we could even talk. My sister, Isabel, was the sun. The entire family orbit was built around her. She was 2 years older than me, and she was vibrant, demanding, and possessed a kind of beauty that made people pause. My parents, Diane and Richard, didn't just adore her, they were in awe of her. I was Chloe. I was the moon, only visible by her reflected light. I was the quiet one, the practical one, the one who didn't require any extra energy. I was the one who remembered to put the recycling out. I was the one who remembered birthdays. I was the one who learned to make myself small so Isabel could take up all the space. My mother, Diane, had a catchphrase she deployed anytime Isabel caused chaos. "Isabel is just passionate," my mother would say, a proud smile on her face. "She feels everything so intensely. She needs a little more grace. You, Chloe, you're so resilient. You don't need us in the same way." They managed to convince me that being ignored was a form of flattery. They said I was independent, but the truth was, I was just on my own. I vividly remember a family dinner when I was 13. It was a Wednesday. I had just won first place in the citywide science fair. I had spent months on that project. I was bursting with pride. I carefully placed the blue ribbon and the certificate on the dining table, right next to my father's plate. I just wanted him to see it. I just wanted to hear him say, "I'm proud of you, Chloe." We all sat down for dinner. My father, Richard, picked up his fork, glanced at the ribbon for a fraction of a second. "That's nice, Chloe," he muttered, before turning his attention to his food. Just then, the side door flew open and Isabel stormed in. She was 15. She was sobbing hysterically because a boy she had a crush on had asked another girl to the school dance. The entire atmosphere in the room changed. My mother shot up from her seat. My father dropped his fork. "Oh, sweetie, what happened?" my mother cooed, rushing to her side. "He hates me," Isabel wailed. "My life is officially over." For the next hour, my parents fussed over her. They promised to buy her a new, even prettier dress for the dance. They told her she was the most popular girl in her grade. They completely forgot about dinner. They completely forgot about me. I sat there, picking at my now cold spaghetti. my blue ribbon a forgotten artifact on the table. It didn't matter. Nothing I ever accomplished mattered if Isabel was having a crisis. That was the blueprint of our lives. Isabel would manufacture a drama, and my parents would shower her with attention, money, and affection to solve it. I would stay silent, do my schoolwork, and ask for nothing. But the deepest cut came when I was 18. I was desperate to go to college and study finance. I knew my parents didn't have much disposable income, largely because they spent it all on Isabel, her car, her designer clothes, her weekend trips. So, I worked my tail off. I earned a partial scholarship and spent the entire summer working 2 jobs to cover the rest. I had saved $7,000. It was sitting in a joint savings account my mother had insisted on opening with me when I was 16. I watched that balance grow every week. That money was my escape. 2 weeks before I was set to leave for university, I walked into the bank to get a cashier's check for my tuition. The bank teller gave me a sympathetic, confused look. "Ms. Peterson, the balance on this account is 0. The floor fell out from under me. I felt a wave of nausea. "That's not possible," I managed to say. "I saved that money. Please check again." "There was a full withdrawal made yesterday, ma'am," she said, pointing to her screen. "By Diane Peterson." I drove home, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the wheel. I stormed into the kitchen. My mother was humming, dicing onions. My father was flipping through the newspaper. Isabel was there, of course, browsing a glossy brochure for a culinary program in Paris. "Where is my money?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it was shaking with rage. My mother didn't even look up from the cutting board. "Chloe, don't use that tone with me." "You took my tuition money?" I said, my voice rising. $7,000. Where is it?" My father let out an exasperated sigh and lowered his paper. He looked at me as if I were the one being difficult. "We needed to make a small financial adjustment," he said. "An adjustment?" I repeated, incredulous. "Isabel was accepted into that prestigious culinary program in Paris," my mother said, finally turning to look at me. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Chloe. The deposit was due immediately. We just didn't have that kind of cash available." I stared at them, then at my sister. Isabel was smirking, not a hint of guilt, just pure entitlement. "That was my money," I said, my voice cracking. "I earned it. I mopped floors and bussed tables all summer for that money." "We'll pay you back," my father said, waving his hand dismissively. "Eventually." "But my tuition is due now," I screamed. "Lower your voice," my mother snapped. "Stop being so selfish. Your sister needs this. You can just take out a student loan. You have excellent credit. Isabel doesn't. You're the responsible one, Chloe. Be a good sister. Be a good sister." That phrase was their weapon. It meant shut up. It meant give Isabel whatever she demands. I cried in my room that night. No one bothered to check on me. I could hear them downstairs laughing with Isabel, planning her Parisian adventure. They were toasting to her future, a future bought with my hard work. I took out the loans. I went to college. I worked 2 jobs to afford my textbooks and rent. I never got that $7,000 back. When I brought it up a year later, my mother accused me of being bitter. "Why must you always bring up the past?" she asked. "We are a family. We support each other." But they didn't support each other. I supported them. They used me. As we grew older, the dynamic didn't just continue. It intensified. I built a solid life for myself. I became a financial analyst at a top investment firm. I excelled at my job because my entire life had been training in managing other people's chaos. I had a beautiful apartment, paid my bills on time, and was completely self-sufficient. Isabel, on the other hand, was a train wreck. She married Daniel, a kind man who was far too good for her. She had 2 children, Mia and Leo. But she had no interest in being a mother. She wanted to be a socialite. She hemorrhaged money she didn't have, launching one failed business after another. She was in a constant state of needing a bailout, and my parents always turned to me. "Chloe, can you lend your sister some money for her mortgage? Chloe, can you help Isabel with her car insurance this month? Chloe, Isabel is so overwhelmed. Go over and help her with the kids." If I hesitated, I was the villain. "You have so much," my mother would say, gesturing around my tidy, peaceful apartment. "Why can't you be more generous? Why are you so cold?" I wasn't cold. I was depleted. I felt like I was being penalized for my own stability. Because I didn't create drama, they assumed I didn't have problems. Because I didn't scream and sob, they assumed I didn't feel pain. I was 33 years old, and I was still that 13-year-old girl with her science fair ribbon, just waiting for someone to see me. But they never did. They only ever saw Isabel, and Isabel knew it. She knew she had a blank check for bad behavior. She knew that no matter how royally she messed up, our parents would rush to her defense, and I would be expected to handle the cleanup. She mockingly called me Saint Chloe to her friends. She belittled my career, my boring life. "You need to live a little, Chloe," she'd say, sipping a glass of wine that I had paid for. "You're so rigid." I endured it. I swallowed my anger. I buried it deep down. I told myself I was doing it to maintain family harmony. I told myself it was just easier to keep the peace. But there was another reason I didn't just cut them all off. It wasn't for my parents, and it certainly wasn't for Isabel. It was for the children. The only sliver of light in the suffocating darkness of my family was Mia and Leo. Mia was 8, and Leo was 5. They were Isabel's children, but most of the time, it felt like they were just tiny tenants living in her house. They were the sole reason I ever answered my sister's calls. They were the only reason I attended those dreadful family dinners where my mother would critique my clothes and my father would ignore my existence. I loved those kids. I loved them with a ferocious intensity that almost scared me. Mia was a lot like me. She was quiet, observant, and perpetually anxious. She had these big, soulful eyes that seemed to see everything. At 8 years old, she was already an expert at walking on eggshells, a master at reading her mother's volatile moods. Leo was still a sweet, cuddly little boy. He loved spaceships and soft blankets. He just wanted to be held. Isabel didn't know how to hold them. To Isabel, her children were props. They were accessories for her meticulously curated social media presence. She posted pictures of them daily. "My little angels," she would caption them. "Mom life is the best life. #blessed." In the photos, they always looked perfect. Coordinated outfits, scrubbed faces, forced smiles. But I knew the reality behind those pictures. I knew that 5 minutes before that photo, Isabel had been yelling at Mia for fidgeting. I knew she had pinched Leo's arm to make him face the camera. I knew that the second she captured the perfect shot, she would thrust an iPad into their hands and ignore them for hours while she applied filters and obsessively tracked her likes. I saw the way they looked at her. It wasn't with a sense of security. It was with a sense of dread. They were always bracing for her to snap. But when they saw me, their little shoulders would relax. Their breathing would get easier. "Aunt Chloe." It was the most beautiful sound in the world. When I visited, I didn't stage photo shoots. I got down on the floor with them. I played with Leo's spaceships. I read books to Mia. I listened to her talk about school, asking her questions and actually waiting to hear the answers. "Aunt Chloe, look at my drawing," Mia would say, holding up a piece of paper. "I see it, Mia. I love the purple you used for the sky. It's beautiful. She dumped them on me all the time. She had no regard for my schedule, no respect for my life. I remember one time about a year ago. It was a Thursday evening. I had a very important work dinner with a potential new client. I was excited. I was wearing my best suit. At 6 p.m., my doorbell buzzed. I opened it to find Isabel standing there with the kids. She was dressed in a sequined cocktail dress. "Surprise," she chirped. "Here they are." "What?" I stared at her, confused. "Isabel, I can't watch them tonight. I have a client dinner in half an hour." "Oh, just cancel it," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "It's probably just some boring old men anyway. I have VIP tickets to a gallery opening with my friends. I absolutely cannot miss it." "Isabel, no," I said firmly. "I told you I was busy tonight." Mia looked up at me, clutching her little backpack. Her lower lip began to tremble. She knew she was being pawned off. "Don't be a witch, Chloe," Isabel hissed under her breath. "Where else are they supposed to go? Daniel is working late. Mom and Dad are in Palm Springs. Do you want me to just leave them on the curb?" She wielded guilt like a weapon. She knew I would never turn the children away. She knew I wouldn't let them see us argue. I looked down at Mia's sad little face. I looked at Leo, who was quietly sucking his thumb. I sighed in defeat. "Fine, leave them." Isabel's face broke into a cold, triumphant smile. "Thanks, sis. You're a total lifesaver. Just be a good aunt. Don't make things difficult." She spun around and left without even kissing her kids goodbye. I canceled my dinner. I ordered a pizza. I built a fort out of blankets in the living room. We watched a movie. That night, after Leo had fallen asleep on the couch, Mia snuggled up next to me. "Aunt Chloe?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetie." "Does Mommy hate us?" My heart shattered. I pulled her into a tight hug. "No, honey, of course not. She loves you. She's just very busy." I lied. I lied to protect her from a truth she was too young to bear. But I hated myself for it. "I wish you were my mommy," Mia whispered into my shoulder. I held her until she drifted off to sleep. As I looked at her peaceful, sleeping face, I felt a familiar rage smoldering inside me. Isabel didn't deserve them. She didn't deserve their unconditional love. She treated them like pieces of luggage she could drop off whenever they became an inconvenience. And I was enabling her. For years, I had enabled her. I told myself I was doing it for the kids. I reasoned that if I said no, Isabel would find someone less reliable to watch them. Or worse, just leave them alone. My mother, of course, championed this arrangement. "It takes a village, Chloe," she would say brightly over the phone. "You should feel honored that your sister trusts you so much with her children. It's good practice for when you finally have your own, if that ever happens." The constant little jabs, the insults disguised as advice. But the ground was shifting beneath us. The kids were getting older. They were starting to see things more clearly, and Isabel was becoming more and more reckless. She started dropping them off with even less warning. Sometimes, a text would come 5 minutes before she pulled up. Sometimes, she would just appear at my door. She started disappearing for longer periods. A quick dinner would turn into an overnight stay. A weekend getaway would stretch into 4 days. She stopped asking. She started telling. "I'm bringing the kids over," she would text. It wasn't a question. It was a decree. If I didn't respond immediately, she would call our mother. And then, like clockwork, my mother would call me. "Chloe, why are you ignoring your sister? She needs your help." It was a coordinated attack from two sides. I was perpetually surrounded, but I was getting so tired. I was 33 years old. I wanted a life of my own. I wanted to stop being everyone's emergency contact. I started to feel the resentment like a physical weight on my chest. I looked at Daniel, Isabel's husband. He was a good man, but he was worn down. He worked 80 hours a week at his law firm to fund Isabel's extravagant lifestyle. He was almost never home. He tried desperately to keep her happy, but it was like trying to fill a bucket with a massive hole in it. He knew she was taking advantage of me. Sometimes, when he came to pick up the kids, he would look at me with apologetic eyes. "I'm so sorry, Chloe," he would say quietly. "I had no idea she just dropped them here." "It's fine, Daniel," I would lie. But it wasn't fine. And then came the week of the audit. I had a massive project at work. It was the single biggest opportunity of my career. If I nailed this quarterly audit presentation, I was in line for a promotion to senior analyst. I would get a significant raise. I would finally earn the professional respect I had worked so hard for. I needed the entire weekend to prepare. I needed quiet. I needed to focus. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Isabel. "Need you to take the kids this weekend, Friday to Sunday. Daniel is out of town for work, and I have a wellness retreat with my friends. Thanks." I stared at the message. No question. No please. Just an order. I thought about my audit presentation. I thought about my boss who was counting on me. I thought about the years of canceled plans, lost money, and swallowed anger. I looked at the text again. Thanks. As if it were a done deal. My hands started to tremble. But this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from pure, unadulterated rage. I typed back a single word. No. I stared at it. It looked so small, so simple. 2 letters. I added to it. I have to work. I cannot take them. You will have to make other arrangements. I hit send. I put my phone down on my desk. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a drum. I had done it. I had actually said no. I didn't know it at that moment, but that one short text message was the first tremor of an earthquake. It was the loose thread that was about to unravel everything. I assumed it would lead to another nasty argument. I thought she would yell, my mother would call, and I would just have to hold my ground. I had no idea how far she was willing to go. I had no idea that my no would turn into a taxi ride into danger. I had no idea that my refusal would put Mia and Leo's lives at risk. I was about to learn a very hard lesson. When you finally stop letting people use you, they don't just politely walk away. They try to burn you to the ground. And Isabel was more than ready to light the match. The text message I sent was concise. No. I stared at my phone. It sat on my desk like a small, silent grenade. For a moment, there was nothing. The office hummed around me with the quiet sounds of keyboards and air conditioning. I tried to pull my focus back to my computer screen, to the massive spreadsheet I needed to analyze for my audit. Then, my phone erupted. It wasn't a normal ring. It felt violent. The screen lit up with her name, Isabel. My stomach immediately clenched. It was a conditioned response. My body had been trained over decades to fear her wrath. My heart hammered. My palms grew slick with sweat. I didn't answer. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. 2 seconds later, it rang again. I silenced it. Then the texts began, a rapid-fire assault. Pick up your phone. Are you kidding me? Don't you dare ignore me, Chloe. You are being such a selfish brat. I flipped my phone over, screen down, so I couldn't see the messages flooding in. I took a shaky breath. Focus, I told myself. You have a career, you have a life, but ignoring a hurricane doesn't make it go away. 10 minutes later, my desk phone rang. The landline at my office. I froze. Only my immediate family had that number for emergencies. My boss, Mr. Henderson, was walking by my desk. He paused, giving me a questioning look. You going to get that, Chloe? Yes, sorry, I mumbled, picking up the receiver. Chloe, what on earth is going on? It wasn't Isabel. It was my mother, Diane. Her voice was sharp, laced with irritation. Isabel had called for backup. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my voice low. "I'm in the middle of work. Is everything okay?" "Isabel tells me you're refusing to help her," my mother stated. She didn't ask for my side of the story. She just delivered my indictment. "She has this retreat. It's been booked for months. She can't get her money back." "She asked me about it 20 minutes ago," I clarified. "She didn't ask months ago. She asked today, for this weekend." "So? You're her sister. You're always free." "I'm not free," I said. My voice wavered slightly, but I pressed on. "I have a major audit presentation on Monday. The regional director is flying in for it. I have to work all weekend to prepare. I cannot watch Mia and Leo." There was a pause, followed by a heavy theatrical sigh. The sigh that was designed to make me feel small and guilty. "Chloe," my mother said, shifting her tone to one of sorrowful disappointment. "Why must you always be so difficult? Your sister is under so much pressure. Daniel is never home. She needs this break. Why can't you just take your laptop to her house? You can watch the kids and work at the same time." "No, Mom," I said. "I can't focus with an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old running around. This is my career. This is important to me." "More important than family?" she snapped, the performance of sadness gone, replaced by raw anger. "You would choose your job over your own flesh and blood? That's cold, Chloe. Even for you. Even for you." The insult landed like a punch, as if I were the cold one, as if I hadn't dedicated my entire 20s to propping them up with my time, money, and sanity. "I am not doing it," I said firmly. I felt tears welling in my eyes, but I willed them not to fall. Isabel needs to hire a babysitter, or she needs to cancel her trip. "She can't afford a babysitter," my mother argued, "and she deserves this. If she can afford a $4,000 wellness retreat, she can afford a babysitter," I shot back. It was the most brutally honest thing I had ever said to my mother. Silence. A stunned, absolute silence. "I don't know who you think you are," my mother hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "But you are ruining everything. If Isabel has a breakdown because she can't get this break, that will be on your conscience. Do you understand me?" "I have to get back to work," I said. And then I did the unthinkable. I hung up on my mother. My hand was shaking so violently I nearly dropped the receiver back in its cradle. I stared at the phone, half expecting it to burst into flames. I expected security to escort me out of the building. I expected the sky to cave in. But nothing happened. The office hummed on. Mr. Henderson continued his walk. The world didn't stop turning just because I said no. I turned off my cell phone completely and buried it in my purse. I worked until 7 p.m. I drove home in a bubble of silence, not even turning on the radio. I just listened to the sound of my own anxious breathing. When I got inside my apartment, I finally turned my phone back on. 14 missed calls, 22 texts. Most were from Isabel, a stream of vitriol. "I hate you. You're just jealous of me. I hope you die alone in that sterile apartment." And then one final text from her, sent at 8 p.m. "Fine. Forget it. I'll figure it out myself. Thanks for nothing." I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was over. She had accepted it. She was furious, but she was going to make other plans. Maybe she'd cancel the trip. Maybe she'd ask a friend. I felt a strange cocktail of guilt and relief. The guilt was a deeply ingrained reflex. But the relief, that was new. I had defended my boundary. I had protected my time. I ordered Chinese takeout. I took a long, hot shower. I set up my dining room table for a weekend of intense work, laying out my spreadsheets, notes, and laptop. I did the right thing. I told myself. She'll figure it out, I whispered to my empty apartment. I went to bed that night feeling a flicker of pride. I thought the battle was over. I thought the drama had passed. I was so incredibly wrong. I didn't know my sister. I didn't understand that for her. Figuring it out didn't mean taking responsibility. It meant exacting punishment. She wasn't going to cancel her trip, and she wasn't going to hire a sitter. She was going to force my hand. She was going to ensure that even when I said no, the final answer was always yes. Saturday morning was bright and clear. The sun streamed through my windows, making the city look fresh and hopeful. I woke at 7 a.m., feeling rested. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't have a knot of dread in my stomach on a Saturday. Normally, I would already be at Isabel's house, cleaning her breakfast mess while she got ready for brunch with friends. But not today. Today was mine. I brewed a strong pot of coffee, put on my most comfortable clothes, and sat at my dining table surrounded by my work. I was deep into building a new financial model for our firm's biggest client. It was intricate, demanding work, and I loved it. I loved the certainty of it. Numbers didn't manipulate you. Numbers didn't lie. If you entered the correct data, you got the correct result. I worked for 3 hours straight, completely in the zone. I felt competent and smart. My phone sat on the table face up and remained silent. No calls from Mom, no texts from Isabel. See, I thought with a sense of satisfaction. They survived. Everything is fine. At 10:45 a.m. my phone rang. I glanced at it, expecting a work call or maybe a telemarketer. The screen read, "Unknown caller." I almost always ignored those, but some gut feeling, some premonition, made me pick it up. "This is Chloe," I answered. "Ms. Chloe Peterson," a man's voice. It was deep, serious, and had an official edge. "Yes?" "This is Officer Miller from the 18th Precinct. I'm calling about 2 minors found in your area, a girl and a boy." My heart stopped cold. The coffee mug in my hand trembled, and hot liquid sloshed onto my hand, but I didn't even feel the sting. "What?" I whispered. "Mia and Leo. They identified you as their aunt," the officer continued, his tone flat and professional. "They were found unattended on North Clark Street. The girl had a piece of paper with your name and this street written on it." My brain struggled to connect the dots. North Clark Street. That was my street. But my apartment building was at the far north end, near the park. It was a long, chaotic road. I don't understand," I stammered. "Where are they? Are they okay?" "They are in our custody here at the precinct, Ms. Peterson," Officer Miller said. "They are physically unharmed, but they are very distressed. The girl claims her mother put them in a taxi and sent them to you. She said you were expecting them." The room started to spin. Isabel. She did it. She had actually done it. She had ignored my texts, my refusal. She had packed up her children, put them in a car with a complete stranger, and shipped them to me like a package. But she hadn't even given them my full address, just my street. I wasn't expecting them," I said, my voice breaking. I told her no. I told her I couldn't watch them. There was a telling silence on the line. I could feel the officer's judgment through the phone. "Miss Peterson, are you coming to retrieve them? Or do I need to contact Child Protective Services immediately?" "I'm coming," I said, my voice firming up. "I'm coming right now. Don't call anyone else. I'm on my way." I hung up. I grabbed my keys and ran for the door. I didn't even bother to change out of my house slippers. I didn't care. I drove to the precinct like a woman possessed. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. My mind raced, trying to piece together the horror. Isabel must have lied to them. "Go to Aunt Chloe's. She's waiting for you outside." She had made them believe I wanted them, that I was excited to see them. Then she put them in a taxi, alone. Mia was 8, Leo was 5, in a Chicago taxi, and she didn't give the driver the building number. Maybe she didn't know it. More likely, she just assumed I would be standing on the sidewalk, psychically aware of their arrival. The taxi driver must have driven up and down my busy street, gotten frustrated, and asked the kids where to stop. She wouldn't know. She would have panicked. The driver, annoyed and on a schedule, probably just pulled over and told them to get out. "This is the street, kids. Out you go." I pictured Leo on the sidewalk, clutching his little spaceship toy. I pictured the cars whizzing past, the noise, the sheer terror. I felt a wave of sickness rise in my throat. I physically gagged as I waited at a red light. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was endangerment. This was criminal negligence. I screeched to a halt in front of the precinct and ran inside. The front desk area was a chaotic swirl of phones ringing and people shouting. "I'm here for Mia and Leo Brennan," I told the desk sergeant. "I'm their aunt." He eyed me, his gaze dropping to my fuzzy slippers before pointing to a door on the left. "Officer Miller is in there with them." I pushed the door open. It was a small gray room with a metal table and chairs, and there, on 2 of those chairs, sat Mia and Leo. They looked so small, so lost. Leo was curled into a ball, his thumb jammed in his mouth, his eyes wide and vacant. He was in shock. Mia was sitting ramrod straight, trying so hard to be the brave older sister. Her face was streaked with grime and dried tears. She was clutching Leo's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. When she saw me, her brave facade shattered. "Aunt Chloe!" She didn't run to me. She just let out a wail, a sound of such profound relief and heartbreak that it tore through me. I rushed to them, dropping to my knees on the cold, dirty floor and wrapping my arms around both of them. "I've got you," I whispered, burying my face in their hair. They smelled like car exhaust and fear. "I've got you. You're safe now." "Mommy said you'd be outside," Mia sobbed into my shoulder. "She said you were waiting for us, but we couldn't find you. The man in the car got mad and made us get out." "I know, baby, I know." I just rocked them back and forth. "We walked for so long," Mia said, her voice trembling. "Leo was scared. I didn't know which building was yours. I looked for the green door, but there were so many green doors." My heart fractured into a million pieces. Isabel hadn't just neglected them. She had set them up to feel rejected by me. She had made them believe I had abandoned them. Officer Miller was standing quietly in the corner. He was a tall man with a stern but not unkind face. He was watching us intently. I looked up at him, not bothering to hide my tears. "She told me she would figure it out," I said to him. "I told her I couldn't. She sent them anyway." Officer Miller gave a slow, deliberate nod. He stepped forward. "Miss Peterson," he said quietly, "this is a serious matter. Child abandonment, endangerment. We have to file a report." I looked at Mia's terrified face, at Leo, who still hadn't spoken a word. My old instinct kicked in, the one that had been programmed into me since birth. Protect Isabel. Lie. Fix it. If I file a report, she could be arrested. My mother would never speak to me again. The family would be ruined. I could lie. I could say it was all a big misunderstanding, that I was just running late getting downstairs. I could smooth it all over. I could absorb the blame, like I always did. Then my eyes fell on Leo's small arm. There was a dark, ugly bruise forming. Not from abuse, but probably from falling on the pavement when they were wandering alone. They could have been hit by a car. They could have been taken. They could have simply vanished. Isabel had gambled with their lives because she wanted to go to a spa. In that instant, something inside me snapped. The invisible cord that had bound me to my sister, the one that made me her perpetual servant, finally broke. I got to my feet. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I looked Officer Miller straight in the eye. "Write it down," I said. My voice was cold and clear. "Excuse me?" "Write it all down," I repeated. "I want to file a formal statement. I did not consent to take them. She abandoned them here. I want everything documented." Officer Miller pulled out a notepad. "Are you certain, Ms. Peterson? This will automatically trigger a full investigation. Child Protective Services will have to be involved." I looked at the kids one last time. "I'm certain," I said. "Do it." I pulled out my own phone. I had 3 missed calls from Isabel. She was probably at the airport, or maybe even at the spa by now, just checking to see if her package had been delivered. I didn't call her back. Instead, I sat down next to Mia and took her hand. "It's going to be okay now," I told her, and I meant it. But I knew that for things to be okay, everything else had to burn to the ground first. Officer Miller sat across from me at the cold metal table, a formal report form in front of him. "I need you to tell me everything that happened, Ms. Peterson, from the beginning." I took a deep, steadying breath. I glanced over at Mia and Leo. A kind female officer had brought them juice boxes and a coloring book. They were huddled in the corner of the room, quiet for now, but their eyes were still fixed on me. "I have the texts," I said. I unlocked my phone and handed it to Officer Miller. He scrolled through the messages, his expression unreadable, but I saw his jaw tighten with every swipe. He saw my explicit no. He saw my explanation about the work audit. He saw Isabel's barrage of insults, and he saw her final text. "Fine, forget it. I'll figure it out myself." "So she acknowledged your refusal," Officer Miller stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. "She knew I was not going to be here. And yet," he said, looking at his notes, "she placed 2 children, ages 5 and 8, into a taxi cab, gave the driver only a street name with no specific address, and did not inform you that they were on their way." "That is correct." "Ms. Peterson, do you have any idea where your sister is right now?" "She's on her way to a wellness retreat. In Sedona, Arizona, I think. Her flight was scheduled for 11 a.m. Officer Miller glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 11:30 a.m. "She's likely in the air," he said. "We need to contact the father." "Daniel is in San Francisco on business," I told him. "He doesn't know any of this. He probably thinks the kids are with me or that Isabel hired a sitter. He's never in the loop on the details. She handles everything." "I see." Officer Miller stood. "I'm going to place a call to Mrs. Brennan. If she's on a plane, it will go to voicemail, but we are required to make the attempt." He dialed Isabel's number on the precinct phone and put it on speaker. I held my breath. Ring, ring, ring. I expected it to go to voicemail, but then there was a click. "Hello?" It was Isabel. Her voice was light and cheerful. I could hear the background noise of an airport lounge, people chatting, luggage wheels rolling. She hadn't taken off yet. She was probably sipping a pre-flight mimosa. Officer Miller motioned for me to remain silent. "Am I speaking with Mrs. Sabrina Brennan?" "Yes, who is this?" Her voice immediately sharpened. She didn't like being caught off guard. "This is Officer Miller from the 18th Precinct Police Department in Chicago." The silence on her end was deafening. The background noise seemed to evaporate. "Police?" she asked, her voice dropping. "Why are you calling me? Is it Chloe? Did something happen to my sister?" I almost let out a bitter laugh. Even now, her first thought was that I was the one in trouble, that she was about to be inconvenienced by my crisis. "No, Mrs. Brennan. Your sister is here with me. I am calling about your children, Mia and Leo. The kids? She sounded genuinely confused. They're fine. They're with their aunt. They are at the police station, Mrs. Brennan, Officer Miller said, his voice like ice. They were found wandering alone on North Clark Street. The taxi driver dropped them on a corner because he was not given a proper address. They were found distressed and unattended. What? Isabel gasped. No, that's not possible. I told the driver. I wrote it down. You wrote down a street name, Mrs. Brennan, not a building number. And according to the evidence provided by Ms. Peterson, she explicitly informed you that she was unavailable to watch them. She's lying, Isabel shrieked, her panic instantly morphing into rage. She agreed. She always agrees. She's just trying to make me look bad because she's jealous of my life. Officer Miller remained impassive. I have the text message exchange right here, Mrs. Brennan. You acknowledged her refusal at 8 p.m. last night. Isabel sputtered. I assumed she'd change her mind. She's their aunt. She's supposed to take them. No, ma'am, she is not. This incident is being officially documented as child abandonment and endangerment. Abandonment? Isabel's voice rose to a screech. I am a good mother. You can't say that. I'm on my way to a wellness retreat. You placed 2 young children in a vehicle with a stranger and directed them to a location where no guardian was present to receive them. That is the definition of abandonment. Put Chloe on, Isabel demanded. Put her on the phone right now. Officer Miller looked at me. I shook my head firmly. I had nothing to say to her. Ms. Peterson is currently giving her official statement, Officer Miller said. Child Protective Services has been notified. A Ms. Evans from CPS is on her way to the precinct to assess the situation. You need to return to Chicago immediately, Mrs. Brennan. I can't, she yelled. They're closing the doors. I'm in first class. This trip cost $4,000. That is your decision, ma'am. But if you fail to appear, temporary custody arrangements will be made in your absence, and this entire conversation is being recorded. There was a pause. I could hear a flight attendant's voice in the background. Ma'am, you need to turn off your phone for takeoff. You did this to me, Isabel screamed, presumably to me, though I hadn't uttered a word. You did this. The line went dead. Officer Miller hung up the phone. He looked at me, his face grim. She hung up, he said flatly. She chose the flight. A wave of nausea washed over me. She chose the trip. She knew her children were at a police station with strangers, and she stayed on that plane. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ms. Evans from CPS will be here within the hour, he said. Given that you are their aunt and you are present, we will likely release them into your emergency care for the weekend, pending a full investigation. Unless, of course, you are still unable to take them. I looked over at Mia and Leo. Mia was coloring a picture of a house, and she was drawing a thick black fence all the way around it. I'll take them, I said. I'm not refusing them. I never refused the children. I refused my sister's entitlement. I will not leave them here. Good, Officer Miller said. But you need to understand, Ms. Peterson, this isn't just a family dispute anymore. This is now a legal case. You are a primary witness against your sister. I know, I said. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. I felt resolved. The next 6 hours were a blur of forms and interviews. Ms. Evans from CPS was a small, no-nonsense woman with sharp, intelligent eyes. She interviewed me. She spoke with Mia alone. She conferred with Officer Miller. Ultimately, she declared that the children would be placed with me for the next 72 hours under an emergency safety plan. Isabel was forbidden from having any contact with them until a hearing could be held on Monday morning. I took the kids home. My apartment, which had been meticulously prepped for a weekend of work, instantly became a crisis bunker. I ordered pizza again. I let them watch cartoons on a loop. I didn't get a single minute of work done on my audit presentation, but for the first time, I didn't care. I put my phone on the kitchen counter. It had been buzzing nonstop. At 8 p.m., Daniel called. I picked up. Chloe. His voice was ragged, like he'd been shouting or crying. "Hi, Daniel. I'm at the airport in San Francisco," he said, his words rushed. "I'm flying back right now. The police called me." "Is it true?" "Yes, Daniel. It's all true." "She put them in a taxi by themselves?" "Yes." He let out a long, shuddering breath. "She told me you were going to pick them up. She said you begged to have them for the weekend because you missed them so much." "She lied, Daniel. I told her I had to work. I told her no." "I know," he whispered. "I believe you. I've known for a long time that she twists things. But this," he trailed off, his voice thick with emotion. "Are they okay? They're safe. They're sleeping now. Mia was terrified, but she's okay." "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. "Thank you for being there, Chloe. I need to ask you for a favor." "What is it?" "I need the report. The police report. And the texts. Can you keep copies for me?" I paused. "Why?" "Because I'm done," Daniel said, his voice suddenly stronger. "I can't do this anymore. I can't let her do this to them. I'm filing for full custody on Monday morning. But I need proof. If I don't have proof, her parents will pay for a shark of a lawyer who will tear me apart. She's already texting me, telling me that you kidnapped them." "I didn't kidnap them." "I know, but that's the narrative she's building. Please, Chloe, don't cover for her this time. Help me save my kids." "I will," I said without hesitation. "I'll give you everything." We hung up. I felt a surge of hope. Daniel was finally waking up. But then the other call came. My mother. I knew I shouldn't answer. I knew it would be nothing but poison. But that small, wounded part of me, the little girl who just wanted her mom's approval, picked up the phone. "Hello? How could you?" Her voice wasn't a scream. It was a low, cold hiss, which was infinitely more terrifying. "Mom, listen to me." "No, you listen to me." She cut me off. "Isabel just called me from the plane. She is hysterical. She is sobbing her eyes out. She said you called the police on her. You had your own sister, treated like a common criminal." "She broke the law, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "She abandoned Mia and Leo on a street corner. They were alone. Anything could have happened to them." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," my mother snapped. "It was a simple mistake. The taxi driver was an idiot. Isabel made a small logistical error, that's all." "A logistical error?" My face grew hot with anger. "Mom, they are children, not misdelivered packages, and she lied to them. She tried to force them on me after I had already said no." "Because you were being selfish," my mother shouted. "If you had just said yes like a decent sister, none of this would have happened. This is your fault, Chloe. You created this entire scene." I stood in my kitchen, gripping the cool granite of the countertop. "I created it?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I created it by making her get on a plane while her children were at a police station. She deserves a break," my mother defended. "She has a difficult life. You wouldn't understand because you don't have children. You don't know the kind of pressure she's under." "I know enough not to leave them on a sidewalk," I said. "You are jealous," my mother spat, and the words hung in the air like toxic smoke. "You have always been jealous of her. You're jealous of her beauty, jealous that she has a husband and a family. You wanted to do this. You wanted to humiliate her and ruin her life. The accusation was so grotesquely unfair, so far from the truth, that it had a clarifying effect. My head cleared. I looked around my quiet, safe apartment. I thought about the peace I felt when I wasn't in their orbit. I thought about my career, my independence. I wasn't jealous, I was free, and they couldn't stand it. "I'm not jealous, Mom," I said calmly. "I'm done." What is that supposed to mean? It means I'm not playing this game anymore. I've given all the evidence to the police. I'm going to give it all to Daniel. And if CPS asks me to testify in court, I will tell them the truth. I will tell them everything about the college money you stole from me, about how you've enabled her entire life, all of it. "You wouldn't dare," my mother whispered, her voice trembling. "You will destroy this family." "This family is already destroyed," I said. "Isabel destroyed it. I'm just refusing to live in the wreckage anymore." "If you do this," my mother said, her voice shaking with pure rage, "don't bother coming for Christmas. Don't bother calling us ever again. You are dead to us." My heart ached. It was a real physical pain in my chest to hear those words from your own mother. But then I looked over into the living room. I saw Mia sleeping peacefully on the sofa, her hand tucked under her cheek. She looked safe. If being dead to my parents was the price for Mia and Leo's safety, then it was a price I was willing to pay. "Goodbye, Mom," I said. I hung up the phone, and then I blocked her number. I stared at my phone for a long moment, waiting for the wave of regret to hit me. I waited for the panic of being disowned, but all I felt was a profound silence. The phone didn't ring again. I walked into the living room and sat on the floor next to the sleeping children. I pulled a blanket over Leo. I had lost my parents. I had lost my sister. But as I looked at their two small faces, breathing softly in the dim light, I realized I had saved them. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was. I wasn't the shadow. I wasn't the doormat. I was the wall that stood between these children and the chaos. And I had no intention of moving. The custody hearing was 10 days later. Walking into the family court building felt like entering a sterile, joyless hospital. The walls were a depressing shade of beige. The air was heavy, and everyone looked exhausted. I walked in with Daniel. He looked like a different man. He was wearing a sharp, dark suit. He was clean-shaven. The defeated, weary man I was used to seeing was gone, replaced by someone focused and determined. "Are you ready for this?" he asked me in the hallway. "Yes," I said. We entered the courtroom. Isabel was already there. If I didn't know the real story, I might have felt sorry for her. She was costumed for the role of a tragic heroine. She wore a soft, pale pink cardigan over a modest dress. A single strand of pearls adorned her neck. Her hair was pulled back in a loose, artfully messy bun. She clutched a tissue, dabbing at eyes that were completely dry. She was playing the part of the heartbroken mother. My mother and father sat directly behind her, a unified front of support. As I walked in, my mother shot me a look of pure hatred before turning her head away dramatically. My father just stared at the floor. I took my seat behind Daniel. I was a witness. I was the enemy. The hearing began. Isabel's lawyer, a loud man in a shiny suit, stood up first. He painted a picture of a terrible misunderstanding. "Your Honor," he boomed, gesturing grandly toward Isabel, "Mrs. Brennan is a loving, devoted mother. She made a simple scheduling mistake. She truly believed that her sister, who, having no children of her own, perhaps doesn't grasp the chaotic nature of parenting, had agreed to watch the children. This was a failure of communication, Your Honor, not a criminal act." He then turned and pointed an accusatory finger at me. The aunt, Chloe Peterson, is a bitter and resentful woman. She is jealous of her sister's life. She saw an opportunity in this confusion to humiliate Mrs. Brennan. She called the police instead of simply calling her sister. This was an act of pure vindictiveness. Isabel let out a loud, theatrical sniffle. My mother patted her shoulder reassuringly. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I didn't react. A year ago, I would have been in tears. I would have wanted to scream, "That's a lie!" But today I knew something they didn't. I knew that facts are much louder than crocodile tears. Then Daniel's attorney, Ms. Foster, stood up. She didn't make a big, dramatic speech. She just started laying out the evidence. I would like to enter into evidence the official police report from the 18th precinct, she said calmly, along with the sworn statement from Officer Miller and the report from Ms. Evans at Child Protective Services. She placed a thick stack of documents on the judge's bench. Furthermore, she added, I have a transcript of the text message exchange between Chloe Peterson and Sabrina Brennan from the evening before the incident. She had the text projected onto a large screen for the entire courtroom to see. The room fell silent. There, in stark black and white, were my words. No, I have to work. I cannot take them. And there was Isabel's reply. Fine, forget it. I'll figure it out myself. There was no room for interpretation. There was no misunderstanding. Ms. Foster turned to Isabel. Mrs. Brennan, you clearly acknowledged that your sister said no. You knew she was not expecting your children. And yet, you put a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old in a taxi with a stranger, gave the driver an incomplete address, and then boarded a plane to Arizona. Isabel's lawyer jumped up to object. She was under a great deal of stress. Stress is not an excuse for child abandonment, Ms. Foster said sharply. Then they called the witnesses. Officer Miller took the stand in his full uniform. He looked imposing. Officer, please describe the condition of the children when you found them, Ms. Foster asked. They were terrified, Officer Miller said, his voice filling the room. They were shivering. The boy was nonverbal from shock. They were on a busy street corner in downtown Chicago. If a patrol car hadn't spotted them when it did, or if the wrong person had found them first, he let the sentence hang in the air. He didn't need to finish it. Then it was my turn. We called Chloe Peterson to the stand. I walked up, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. I looked at the judge, a woman with graying hair and sharp eyes, who was reading through my file. Ms. Peterson, Mrs. Foster began, did you agree to babysit for your sister on the weekend in question? No, I said, my voice clear and steady. I said no, multiple times. Why did you call the police instead of your sister? Isabel's lawyer asked on cross-examination, trying to paint me as cruel. I called the police because 2 abandoned children had been found, I stated simply. And when the officer on duty called my sister, she refused to come back. She chose to stay on the plane. I looked directly at Isabel. Her sniffling had stopped. She was glaring at me with pure, undiluted venom. I chose the children's safety over my sister's convenience, I said, turning back to the judge, and I would do it again. My mother let out an audible gasp from the back row. The judge looked at me, then she looked at Isabel, then she looked at the texts on the screen. She closed the file. The courtroom was utterly silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. Judge Keaton adjusted her glasses. She wasn't looking at the lawyers anymore. She was looking directly at Isabel. Mrs. Brennan, the judge began, her voice quiet but carrying immense weight. I have sat on this bench for 20 years. I have seen many parents make mistakes. I have seen parents who are struggling with poverty, with illness, with being overwhelmed. She paused. But what I see in this case is not a mistake. It is arrogance. Isabel visibly stiffened. The fake tears had vanished. You treated your own children like an inconvenience, the judge continued. You willfully ignored a direct refusal from their caregiver. You endangered their lives so you could go to a spa. And when you were caught, when the police called you, you still refused to return for them. The judge picked up her gavel. The court finds that Sabrina Brennan poses a significant risk of neglect. Therefore, primary, physical, and legal custody is hereby awarded to the father, Daniel Brennan, effective immediately. Isabel let out a sharp cry. What? No, you can't do that. Mrs. Brennan will be granted supervised visitation only, the judge said, her voice like granite, ignoring the outburst. 2 hours per week at a court-approved facility. This order will remain in effect until she successfully completes a 12-week parenting course and undergoes a full psychological evaluation. This is insane, Isabel screamed, lurching to her feet. Her carefully constructed mask had shattered. The sweet, sad mother was gone, and the spoiled bully was back. I am a good mother. My sister is a liar. She planned all of this. Sit down, Mrs. Brennan, or I will hold you in contempt of court, the judge warned. Isabel collapsed back into her chair, turning desperately to her lawyer. But he just shook his head. There was nothing he could do to fight the mountain of evidence. Court is adjourned, the judge said. The gavel struck the wood. Bang! It was the sound of a prison door slamming shut. It was the sound of my freedom. We walked out into the hallway. Daniel let out a long, shaky breath. He looked like a man who had just set down a 100-pound backpack he'd been carrying for a decade. Thank you, he said to me, his eyes full of gratitude. I could never have done this without you. Go be a dad, I told him. Go get your kids. He walked off to sign the final paperwork. I turned to leave. Chloe? I stopped. I knew that voice. Isabel was marching down the hallway toward me, my parents trailing behind her like furious guards. Her face was blotchy and red. Her perfect hair was coming undone. She looked feral. She stopped 2 feet in front of me, jabbing a finger in my face. You ruined my life, she spat. Are you happy now? You took my children from me. You humiliated me. You destroyed everything. My mother stepped up beside her. You are a disgrace, she hissed. Don't you ever contact us again? You have no family. I looked at them. I looked at my sister, who still couldn't take an ounce of responsibility. I looked at my mother, who would defend Isabel, even if she committed murder. I braced myself for the familiar wave of guilt, the fear of being abandoned, but it never came. Instead, I felt calm. I felt strong. I didn't ruin your life, Isabel, I said, my voice even and quiet. You did. You put them in that taxi. You stayed on that plane. You're a jealous, bitter spinster, Isabel screamed. People in the hallway were stopping to stare. And you, I said, turning my gaze to my mother. You enabled her. You taught her that she could do whatever she wanted and someone else would always pay the price. Well, I'm done paying. You'll regret this, my father grumbled, speaking for the first time. No, I said, looking back at Isabel one last time. I won't. You almost ruined their lives. You should be grateful I was there to catch them, because if I hadn't been home, if I hadn't answered that phone call, you wouldn't just be losing custody, you'd be facing felony charges. She opened her mouth to scream again, but no words came out. She just stared at me, trembling with a powerless rage. I turned my back on them. I walked down the long hallway toward the exit. I could hear them whispering furiously behind me, but their voices sounded distant, like a radio station fading out of range. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the bright sunshine. The air felt fresh. I took a deep, clean breath. It was the first breath of the rest of my life. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in Daniel's living room. The house felt different. It used to feel like a sterile museum. White carpets, fragile vases, everything for show. Now, there were toys on the rug. There were crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator. It looked like a home. Mia and Leo were on the floor, building an elaborate castle out of blocks. "Look, Aunt Chloe," Leo shouted. "It's a fortress." "It looks very strong," I said, smiling. Mia looked up at me, her eyes bright. The anxious shadows that used to live there were gone. "Daddy's making tacos," she announced proudly. "My favorite," I said. Daniel walked in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He looked tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the happy exhaustion of a parent who was actually present. "Dinner in 5, he said. He sat on the arm of the sofa next to me. "How are the visits going?" I asked quietly. "Okay," Daniel sighed. "She shows up at the center. She brings them expensive gifts. She tries to take pictures for her Instagram, but she's not allowed to post them anymore. The kids are polite, but they don't run to her." "Do they miss her?" "They miss the idea of her," Daniel said thoughtfully. "But they don't miss the yelling. The nightmares have stopped, Chloe. Leo sleeps through the night now." I nodded. That was all that mattered. My parents had kept their promise. They hadn't called. I hadn't called them. Christmas was approaching, and it would be the first one I wouldn't spend rushing around my parents' house, cooking the entire meal while Isabel held court and opened presents. I was going to spend it here with Daniel, Mia, and Leo. Or maybe I'd take a trip myself. Maybe I'd go to a spa. The irony made me smile. I had realized that losing the family I was born into was the price I had to pay to save these kids. And it was a bargain. I watched Mia carefully place the final block on top of the tower. It wobbled for a second, but it held. She looked at me and beamed. "I did it." "You sure did," I said. For 33 years, I thought no was a dirty word. I thought it meant I was selfish, difficult, unlovable. But I was wrong. No was a shield. No was a boundary. No was the wall that kept the poison out and kept the good things safe. It was the most powerful word I had ever learned. I felt a small hand on my shoulder. It was Mia. She had climbed up onto the sofa and was leaning her head against me. "Aunt Chloe?" "Yeah, kiddo?" "I feel safe now," she whispered. Tears pricked my eyes, but this time they were happy tears. I wrapped my arm around her tiny shoulders. "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Me too." The storm was over. The house was quiet, and for the first time, the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with peace. I said no for the first time, and my sister retaliated by putting 2 crying children in a taxi. She thought she could break me. She thought I would fold, just like I always had, but she didn't realize that her cruelty would be their salvation. I lost my parents. I lost my sister. I lost the fantasy of a happy family. But in doing so, I saved the only 2 people who truly mattered, and I finally found myself. If you are the person who always gives in, if you are the one who carries all the weight just to keep the peace, please listen to me. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to walk away. Because sometimes you have to burn the bridge to stop the monster from crossing it. And the peace you find on the other side, It is worth every single flame.